course, it's a Labour conference that will be remembered for only one thing: for the dragging out violently by hired thugs of an 82-year-old Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany. Mind you, he provoked it, the old fella. I mean, he asked for it. Shouted nonsense at the Foreign Secretary's speech. Nonsense at the Foreign Secretary's speech, in which he told us that the invasion of Iraq had been about democracy. Bringing democracy to the poor Iraqis. And in the same week, we learned that Dr. John Reid, formerly of this parish, and now the Defence Secretary, Dr. John Reid had just been in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, the prison state run by a kleptocratic family which has even imposed its own family name on the country, whose main purpose in ruling is to loot their country of trillions of dollars and spend it in the bordellos and the casinos and the arms bazaars and the stock markets and the banks of the West. Dr. Reid was not in Riyadh to talk to them about the allegations of torturing prisoners, including Scottish people, British citizens, who claim to have been tortured in the dungeons of Saudi Arabia. He was not there to speak to them about their treatment of women in a country where women are legally forbidden to drive cars, not allowed to set foot on the street without being accompanied by a male relative, not allowed literally to show their face. Dr. Reid was not in Saudi Arabia to talk to them about their total absence, and I mean total absence, of any rights of any kind. He was not there to talk to them about their practice of cutting people's heads off in public on Friday afternoons, live on television, their blood spurting into the sand on live TV. He was not there to talk to them about any of these things. He was there to sell them £40,000 million worth of new weapons with which to repress their people in order to stay in power, the better to loot their country for the benefit of themselves and others. And they ask us to believe they invaded Iraq to impose freedom and liberty and democracy in Iraq at the same time as in the country next door, strengthening the tyranny whose iron heel is on the necks of its own people for more than half a century. These hypocrites who strut around the international stage with Bush are a disgrace to anything called Labour. In fact, Labour, which became New Labour, became non-Labour, is now anti-Labour. There is nothing Labour about Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and John Reid and David Blunkett and all the others. And this is where we come in, because every country needs a Labour Party, by which I mean every country needs a party that will stand up for those who have nothing to sell except their work, their labour, in exchange for which, if at the end of the week or the month there is no wage or salary, the person will go hungry, will be finished. Britain once had such a party, no longer does, and new parties have had to be formed in order to fill that vacuum. If you want to know If I've got time, how far they've travelled, you could stand with me on the slopes at Heathrow Airport with hundreds of women workers sacked by Gate Gourmet at 3 minutes notice by megaphone in a car park by an American boss who'd flown in for the day bringing hired thugs with him to throw the women off the premises. He needn't have bothered, he could have got those guys off the Labour Party conference. Not only will Mr. Blair not scrap the anti-union laws that make such tyranny possible, he goes around the world boasting about the flexibility of the British workforce, by which he means the sackability. When he says we're the most flexible workforce in Western Europe, he means we'll work the longest hours for the lowest pay, with the least rights, with the worst contracts, with the poorest security of employment. The British workers are the easiest workers to sack in Western Europe, is what Mr. Blair boasts to British or to foreign capital to get them to invest in the British economy. This Labour Party has abandoned the working people, has abandoned the people now too old to work. Joe was talking about pensioners. In the fourth richest economy in the world, Britain has the poorest pensioners in Western Europe. According to Strathclyde University's study last year, British pensioners are more likely to die of hypothermia in the winter than any pensioners anywhere in Europe, including Siberia. Labour has abandoned those not yet working. I've been speaking all over England to student audiences where Respect is signing up hundreds of people at every university in the freshers' fairs. And one of the reasons we're able to do it is because nobody can go to these universities without being ready to take on thousands, tens of thousands of pounds worth of debts in student loans and top-up fees, tuition fees. This imposed by a new Labour cabinet, every one of whom was educated entirely free of charge at the taxpayer's expense and given a student grant on top of it. Labour has abandoned those who need its help arguably even most: the immigrants, the ethnic minorities, the asylum seekers. David Blunkett tells us, told me personally in the cloakroom of the House of Commons, he told me that he has to speak the way he speaks on these matters, or the far right will speak these words. Well, what's the difference if you're a member of the ethnic minority? You hear it from Blunkett or you hear it from the BNP. One of the things that he used to and his successors in New Labour have clearly gone along with is the notion that Britain is full. It's not full. It's nearly empty. Scotland is nearly empty. Scotland is the only country in the entire world whose population is falling. Jack McConnell is appealing to people to immigrate to Scotland, whilst the Home Office is taking a Kosovan family to Glasgow Airport and deporting them, even though all their neighbours, all their workmates, all their classmates are begging for the family to be allowed to stay. The family wants to stay. We need that family. McConnell's appealing for such families, whilst on the other hand of New Labour, they're kicking such families out, all to appease the ravenous beasts of racism in the gutter press and on the far right of British politics. What kind of Labour Party is that?
Here, here.